Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of Teaching the Conspiracies. I've actually changed the order, and I was going to talk about these contemporary conspiracies in week 5. But because we have some participants that are expressing a lot of interest, not in teaching younger students, but teaching adults, we've got both. I went ahead and moved this week up to week 3. And I need to say at the outset that these are not topics that I am teaching and would want to teach my middle school students or to introduce to elementary students. Maybe talk to some high school students, but college and adults are going to be more appropriate for these topics. But I also think it's really, really difficult to talk about some of the most polarizing contemporary conspiracy theories. And that's why, as we'll talk in week 4 and 5, introducing the SIFT web literacy framework and doing it in a context like the moon landings can allow us to have good conversations about how we stop, investigate the source, find trusted coverage, and trace to the original in a less controversial, less contemporary context. So what I'd like to go ahead and do in this video, and I actually recorded this twice. Well, I am recording it twice because I recorded the whole thing and I forgot to turn on my little screen share here, is I want to just give you a little quick overview and do a demonstration of the weekly create. And that's basically what I'm going to do. So same format that we've had before. We've got required media. There's a couple videos about QAnon, a Wikipedia article on QAnon to scan, and then I've listed several articles. You can choose one about Taylor Swift, because the whole thing about is Taylor Swift a psyop in the Super Bowl is an example of a contemporary conspiracy theory. And there's some good analysis here in these articles about why psychologically these are appealing and why these are shared. And sort of, what do we do about these things? So in terms of the reflection this week on Flipgrid, I want to encourage you to answer one or more of these questions. The last one is really maybe the hardest one, and that is, can the distrust that many people articulate for the media be rebuilt? Can public trust be restored? And if so, how? The second question is, when does a conspiracy theory move from being amusing and fun to being really troubling and even dangerous? And then this first question is the one I'm going to answer briefly here. Can you share a story about how you've personally intersected with a friend, family member, or colleague about a contemporary conspiracy theory? And my story goes back to COVID, when we were in lockdown and we weren't seeing a lot of folks. My wife and I drove up in May of that year of 2020 to the Colorado School of Mines in Golden to pick up our son who was graduating from college. And I remember this incident really well because it happened when we were on this trip. But there was a video documentary that had come out called Plandemic. And one of the extra resources from last week actually referenced this video. I think it was a John Cook article. And anyway, it had been debunked by several different people. This quote scientist did not have strong credentials, and the documentary was attempting to prove why vaccines were terrible, and they were part of a conspiracy as COVID was, and that the whole thing had been planned and orchestrated by, nefarious secret elites, and nobody should be getting a vaccine. So there was someone in our church back in Oklahoma who had shared that on their Facebook, and I made the mistake at the time of just directly sharing a link to an article that debunked this documentary. And so that actually led to a real angry interaction with this person, and they blocked me on Facebook, and that really completely broke the relationship that we had. Now, this wasn't a close friend of mine, but it was somebody that I knew, and I was pretty good buddies with his father, and it didn't break my relationship with him, but boy, it was really tough. And so I would definitely share out of that a caution that if you do know someone who is subscribing to one of these conspiracy theories, a direct confrontation, particularly in a public place, like on their Facebook page or another social media page, that can really, be a counterproductive way of addressing that issue. And part of the motivation for me in talking about all these conspiracy theories is wanting us to educate students at a younger age about how there are rabbit holes of conspiracy theory and how we can use, for instance, the SIFT web literacy framework, which we'll talk about in depth next week, to stop, investigate the source, find trusted coverage, and trace to the original. So there's my quick story, not in Flipgrid, but this is an example of a reflection. In terms of the weekly create, that's what I'd like to demonstrate quickly, and it is to create an info pick that summarizes or editorializes on any of the topics from this week, and then put that on our Padlet. Let me mention that we did have some questions about how to make sure that your Padlet post is not anonymous. That is to go up here to the corner, the upper right corner, and go ahead and click on that icon and make sure that you log in. And so then you'll be able to have your post attributed so that we'll know it was you and it wasn't anonymous. On our page where it says share an info pick, I have a link to this website that I started in 2013 called Show with Media. If you click on the home page, there's all these different products to be able to create. Last week, I encouraged you to make and share a sketch note. This week, it is an info pick. And an info pick is basically a visual image that combines text with a visual. And so I've got different examples of these. There's different apps. There's steps on how to do that. I've got some tutorials. And what I want to go ahead and show you is how to use the website Canva. This link to brain hacking info picks is one of my most, last semester's, well, I guess it was in the spring, lesson that I taught about how advertising can really try and activate our emotion. And I showed the students how to use canva.com, and that's what I'm going to do here. So you can log in and create a free account on Canva. If you do that as an educator, you can have access to all the pro features for free without needing to pay. I'm going to be using just a free account here. And I'm going to go ahead under Create a Design to click Custom Size. It can be a little overwhelming with all the templates and everything. I'm just going to make a square image that's 1,500 pixels by 1,500. It's just 1,500 by 1,500. And I'll say create, and it'll create it here. Now, within Canva, you can go to different elements and you can search and import things. You can also copy and paste things. And what I'm going to model right now is just going to Google, and I'm going to talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. So I'm going to type in Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce to see what kinds of pictures I can get. Now, this also brings up, and I'll click on images here. Copyright. Do we have a right to use these pictures, and what kind of context we have to use these pictures? Now, there is educational fair use, and that is something that I even talk with my middle school students about, because the way in which we use copyrighted media has a bearing on whether that's legal or not. But one of the things that I teach my students to do is to go here under Tools and select Usage Rights, and we will filter this for Creative Commons images. So these are images that have been licensed, and there is actually one here that is looks like a sweatshirt that says Kansas City Swiftie. So I'm going to use this because it is a Creative Commons licensed image. I'm going to go ahead and copy the image. I'm going to bring it over to my Canva design, and I'm going to paste it in. And one of the things, I have to click allow, that Canva lets us do real easily is crop this. And so actually I used the other side of that. I did this before in my recording. I had to cut. I'll just go ahead and do this. I usually like to, on a info pick, completely fill the whole image that I'm using with a picture. And so obviously that already has a picture on it, but I'm going to overlay some text on top of it. And so I'm just going to click on text, add a heading, and I'm going to say, not a PSYOP. And that black does stand out okay on this red. One of the things, though, that I can do is I can highlight my text and come up here to the um, pick the color tab and either pick a color or I can choose to add a color. And I like to use this eyedropper tool and I can come pick up, white, or I could actually pick up the exact yellow of that Kansas City Chiefs sweatshirt. And there you go, not a psyop. So that's an info pick. It just is an image that has some text that I've added to try to communicate some kind of a message. I'm going to go to the upper right corner and click share. I'm going to go down to the download and I will just leave it at the default suggested file type of PNG. That's fine. And I'll click download. And so now this is going to download here onto my hard drive. And so if I go back to our path right, I've got the link to our class Padlet, which we were looking at, I think, a little bit earlier. Yes. And now I'm already logged in. I can click on plus and choose the first choice, which is to upload a file. And I will see the downloads folder that I can select my picture in. And I'll say, not a PSYOP. And I can go ahead and publish that. And that will be attributed to me because I have signed in to the Padlet. So that's just a quick demo of how you can do that optional media share. And hopefully that is helpful to you. There are a large number of optional media books, podcasts, videos. These have to do with white supremacy, with Christian nationalism, um, honestly, with some fairly dark and difficult material. And again, as I said at the outset, these are not topics that I talk about with my own middle school students, but I really do feel like it's important for us to be aware of them as citizens. I also think it's important not to marinate in them too long because there are the news can be really depressing. And there certainly are folks that are in some pretty deep rabbit holes when it comes to conspiracy theory. One of the things I'll point out is I do have a link to the 6-part HBO series about QAnon. This is a bit dated because we don't hear as much about QAnon, but in terms of conspiracy theory and where all of these things came from, a lot of people that have subscribed to conspiracy theories like Pizzagate, like QAnon, there are far right extremists who are, suggesting other things like the Taylor Swift psyop conspiracy that we're reading about right now. So anyway, you have to be a subscriber to HBO or HBO Max in order to see this. There are a couple interviews I think that you can see and previews without delving into it. But anyway, I did find that to be pretty eye-opening. But obviously that is beyond the time that we're expecting, for this course. But the book Cultural Warlords by Talia Lavin is excellent. She is Jewish. She is talking about how she found so many things about white supremacy and that movement by really going undercover. I listened to that entire book on Audible. And so of all those resources, those are two that really stand out for me. So there's more that you can obviously check out. But I hope that that's been helpful to you. I hope you're enjoying the course. I look forward to your feedback. Do remember that if you would like to provide some feedback on discussion, as text discussion instead of just doing the audio Flipgrid, you're welcome to do that as well. But hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope you're enjoying the course. Look forward to hearing your feedback and continuing to learn with you in our class teaching the conspiracies.